Yeah.
All together now. Gong.
F sharp.
F sharp.
Well, of course, 9-1.
You'll do it.
I'll do it by memory.
You got it here, okay? Yes.
That's even better. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, your chairman is a little bit frazzled this afternoon. It's been a hectic weekend and week, so I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here. We will try to get started and okay. Let's do the ethics statement first. I'm trying to remember. Board members, Mr. President, and financial administrative staff, you are reminded that you have a duty to avoid all conflicts of interest, potential conflicts of interest, and appearances of conflicts of interest. Do any of you know or anticipate any conflict of interest, potential conflict of interest, or appearance of conflict of interest regarding the matters on the agenda for today's meeting?
No.
We'll let the minutes reflect no conflicts were reported, other than the fact that I am advertising for which needs.
And so am I.
So we opened our third store this morning, so nothing has nothing to do with our agenda today. But the chairman takes a little bit of.
If you go, you can always steal a pen. They don't have them chained down.
We're not that big bank.
Not advisable all the time.
Anyway, sorry. Back to serious business. So, Carolyn, would you like to call the roll, please?
Yes. Troy Ball, Wayne Brigman, Joe Brummett,
Here.
Mike Fryer,
Present.
Mr. Hart,
Here.
Richard Hurley,
Here.
Don Rock,
Here.
Ms. Myers, here, John Parham, Norm Sherrill, Ray Spells,
Here.
Mandy Stone, David Wyatt, and Jane English. Here.
Mr. Chairman, before we move into the closed session, I'd like to ask if we could move to item 4F, which is the 93 Victoria naming opportunity. It is the recommendation of the administration that we rename the building, or perhaps a better way of putting it is to name the building, because it never has that name. It's always been called 93 Victoria. That we rename the building after our long-serving, maybe it's long-suffering, board member, Dr. Joe B. Robertson. And so that is our recommendation. We have a resolution, and if you'd like, I can read that to the group.
You want to read that before we take a vote on it? We'll read that as we accept.
I would make
Ms. Robertson, come approval.
Second.
Let's ask Ms. Robertson to come up. Jody's wife is with us today, Alita Robertson. Come on up, and we'll give you a little seat over here while we read this.
Here. Wanted her to hear that.
Okay, this is the resolution, building naming resolution in honor of Dr. Joe B. Robertson Sr. Whereas Dr. Joe B. Robertson Sr. was a prominent leader of the Asheville community, a practicing family dentist for over 45 years, and whereas Dr. Joe B. Robertson Sr. was the son of one of Asheville's leading educators, Loncombe County Superintendent of Schools, T.C. Robertson, and whereas Dr. Joe B. Robertson Sr. served on the A.B. Tech Board of Trustees for more than 35 years, from 1972 to 2011, including 7 years as chair, and was named trustee emeritus in 2013. And whereas Dr. Joe B. Robertson Sr. was instrumental in establishing A.B. Tech's dental hygiene and dental assisting programs in 1972. And whereas Dr. Joe B. Robertson Sr. led a campaign in 2002 to raise $500,000 for the renovation of the dental clinic. And whereas Dr. Joe B. Robertson Sr. was a supporter of the college who encouraged students to attend the college dental program employed them in his practice, and traveled extensively for the college, attending meetings for many years. And whereas Dr. Joe B. Robertson Sr. received the AB Tech's President's Award in 2003 for exceptional and extraordinary service to the college. And whereas an AB Tech Scholarship for students enrolled in the college curriculum programs was established in the memory of Dr. Joe B. Robertson Sr. And whereas Dr. Joe B. Robertson Sr. passed away on January 27, 2014, therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Asheville-Buncombe Technical Community College, that the AB Tech Administration Building located at 93 Victoria Road shall be named for Dr. Joe B. Robertson Sr. effective April 14, 2014. That's the recommendation of the administration.
Second.
We have a first and second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Martha, you
Well, I thought I was going to stay in the back of the room. I would have dressed a little different. Can I borrow your bow tie? Oh, okay. Thank you very much. This is so wonderful. Couple more?
One more. Perfect. Thank you.
I tell you, Joe would move in the building if he were here now. He so loved OB Tech. Don't you think that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, well, thank you very much. And I will leave y'all for now.
We will move back to item number 1. So may I have a motion for closed session, please?
Mr. Chair, I move that the trustees enter into closed session pursuant to GS 143-318.11, parentheses 1A1 and 3, in order to discuss confidential personnel matters pursuant to GS 115D-27-29, and to discuss matters protected by the attorney-client privilege.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. We will go into closed session. Yes. Again.
Yes, sir.
Okay, welcome back into open session. First thing on, the next thing on the agenda is our consent agenda.
Move approval of consent agenda as distributed.
Second.
First and second, any comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
I'll vote in favor of the exception of the closed session minutes. Let the record show. Everything else
So the record would just reflect that Mr. Early is voting no to the consent agenda for the reason of the closed session.
only the closed session.
Right, that's all we need to do. Sure.
Well, wait a minute on that. That's part of the consent. I need to vote. Need change. I wasn't part of any of the closed sessions. I wasn't on the board, and I don't feel like I should have a vote.
Did you just abstain?
The record can reflect he abstained from the closed session portion, exactly.
Very good. Thank you, John.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a point of clarification the board might help us with. We've been putting for about a year and a half now the personnel actions under the consent agenda. And in the past, that has been a specific voted action in and of itself. And so I'd like to know if you'd like to return to that, or if you're satisfied having the consent agenda, having the personnel actions in the consent agenda.
Any thoughts on that?
We really kind of talked about it in closed session, remember, like that question? Because by law, they remain closed.
When he's talking about hirings and firings and all of that.
Personnel actions cannot be public.
I think these personnel actions can be.
Right.
These
Oh,
are,
these are different?
these are different, these are different
Oh,
ones.
the,
yeah.
oh, okay.
This is hiring, retirements,
Then that-
all of that long list that we get. I don't have any objection to them being there. I think that if I found an objection, I could simply ask if we had them removed from the consent agenda and we could have a discussion on it. But so I would say leave them under that.
Okay.
I would do.
Okay. We are going to add in the future, really go back to something that we've been doing in the past, and that is on the new hires, we will give you a very brief 2 or 3 line bio. So that you'll know what schools the individual attended and where he or she went to work. And that'll just be included in the consent agenda for you.
Excellent. Okay, then on to resolutions and action items.
Okay, the first item, A, the Flex 25 disbursements. Lisa, you're here, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I wonder if you would, you or Kay, whoever wants to take the ball, we'll discuss it.
Sure, glad to. The Flex 25 disbursements, that was, we conducted an audit in January of all of our full-time employees. That has been a long-standing benefit. It started in the 90s when Charles Branch was here. And it was an opportunity or an effort to get employees to, or encourage them to contribute money toward a 401k or another tax-deferred savings product. It was just $25 per month that was given to those employees. We recently did the audit in January and we saw where sometimes when people made changes, say for example, they had been using that $25 toward dependent coverage for their dental insurance or their health insurance. Maybe they made a change, their child aged out, or they became divorced or something of that nature. And so that change was never flipped over and the benefit continued for the benefit of that employee. So we felt like that we would take a look at that and work with Lisa to see what the cost would be to make that right for those employees who were either their fault or the fault of the college, but they had not fully received that benefit since they've been with the college. So that's what that.
So do we need to vote that in?
No.
Okay.
No, it was never a voted benefit.
I didn't think so.
I removed it from an action item. It shouldn't be in that column. And what we've really done is corrected that error in the benefits which have been provided to these individuals.
Dennis did not feel comfortable making that adjustment without the board.
Right, okay, I got you.
Aware of that.
Okay, B, which is the Central Sterile Processing Certificate. Melissa?
I don't know if you want to do B and C together because it's similar in terms of, it's just anytime we are submitting a proposal for approval from the state for a new program or a change in a program, it needs to come to the Board of Trustees for approval because that's part of the application packages that we have to have the Board of Trustees approval. The Central Sterile Processing is a diploma level, I think it's diploma or certificate, that is really a part of our surgical technology program. And the target right now is for people that are currently working in the field, but be able to, so it's going to be like a late afternoon, early evening program, to be able to allow people that are currently working in healthcare to come and get this additional certification. And so it would not require any additional space because it's going to use space we currently have, but we're going to be doing it at a different time frame. So that's one area. The other area, nursing assistant, is, and Shelley, that's down at the end right now, we have certified nursing assistant that runs through Con Ed, but there are schools all over the state that actually run it in either both curriculum and or Con Ed. We are applying for this to run through curriculum really for the purpose of being able to, down the road, apply for a new healthcare diploma that the state is allowing us to offer. But we cannot apply for the diploma if we do not currently have the program offered at curriculum of the college. So we are applying first for the curriculum program, and at some point we probably, since all of our nursing applicants have to have the CNA certification in order to apply to the nursing program, we will likely suggest that our nursing applicants run through the curriculum nursing assistant program. and then they would be able to transition on into the curriculum nursing program. We will probably, if we get approval for this from you all and from the state, we will then, not too distant future, come back to you to ask for this health science diploma that the state has now put out there for us to be able to use. Part of that is what we call, it's the allied health wannabes, we say. Students that are kind of in the pipeline for allied health programs, kind of taking courses and waiting for the application period, because as you know, many of our programs are competitive, and we have X number of slots, and we often have many more applicants than we have slots for. So a lot of them are sort of waiting in the wings. By having these programs available, we would actually be able to get them into a program that would build some skills for them and actually have classes taken that would help them toward getting into the program. And also, if they finish the diploma, they could actually go out and they would have a set of skills that they would be able to use in the workplace. So it's kind of another avenue of allowing healthcare, students that are interested in healthcare to get some kind of a certificate or a credential. And so these are the two programs that we would like to send to the state for approval, and we're ready to do that, but we're looking for your support in approving them. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Second.
Have a motion to approve and a second. Any questions, further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Okay, 4D is a discussion which we have begun before, but we decided to see if we could kind of put the entire matter before you today. The question is whether the college wants to continue with the direct student loan programs that the federal government offers through the financial aid office here on campus. And I have asked 3 experts to come in and talk to you about the matter. Brian Clemens may look a little droopy-eyed, and that's because he has triplets. Brian is the expert. Yes. Brian is the director of financial aid, and he is going to give you kind of an overview of financial aid. This is going to be quick and dirty, and then after that, Melissa is going to give you the pros of why we ought to remain in the federal financial aid program. Is that correct?
Terry will.
Terry is going to do the pros. Brian is, I'm sorry, and Melissa is going to do the negatives, why we ought to get out of the program. And then you will have your chance to have discussion after that. Lady and gentlemen, be brief. Go ahead.
We'll try. This is a very, very serious, very important subject matter, so it may take a little bit of time. We want to give it its worthy due cause and time and attention. We appreciate you, your attention and taking this into account and this opportunity to present. I believe last year we did introduce the board to the direct student loan program here at AV Tech. Just a light introduction. Several of you asked for additional information. So since that time, we've really dug in and did some analysis and learned more about where we are with our direct student program. And so this is our opportunity to present that information to you so you'll be more informed about your decision as we move forward in this program. As you know, it's a very, very salient topic nationally, statewide, and locally. It has definite implications for students and colleges. So just want to provide a little bit of context before we kind of kick off the presentation here. As you know, one of the great opportunities we afford students here at AV Tech and all community colleges is the great educational value, the quality of instructions that our students receive here for the relative low cost in comparison, especially to a four-year university or private institution. Our tuition is $70.50 per credit hour. For a semester, it's $1,144. That's a fraction, obviously, of what it would cost to go to any four-year institution in North Carolina or any other state. Despite the low cost of tuition here at AV Tech and the community college in general, 70% of our students still need federal student aid in the way of Pell Grants, in the way of scholarships, work studies, and direct student loans is a part of that. Now, the direct student loan program is a low-interest loan dispersed by the Department of Ed directly to students and or parents to help offset the cost of college attendance, which, as you know, keeps going up. Now, if direct student loans are used properly and wisely, they're a great thing. However, if they aren't used wisely, there are consequences both to the student and the institution. So that's the dilemma that colleges and universities are faced with nationally here in the United States and locally here at AB Tech. So we want to present this information just to provide an overview and really a status of where we are at AB Tech. Okay, so we want to go over these items, and as Melissa mentioned, our expert, and we are very, very fortunate to have Brian Clemens here at AB Tech. By the way, he's known statewide as an expert in federal student aid. So he's going to go over the bulk of this presentation, and Melissa and myself will just kind of fill in the blanks here. So Brian will get us started with financial aid protocol.
Well, it's a very short presentation, so I don't know if we really can use the word bulk, but we're going to go for it. And you see it's titled Financial Aid Protocol. Some of you may know it as Financial Aid Awarding Philosophy. And our philosophy here at AB Tech is we try to give students as much free money on the front end as possible. So we start with this first bullet, essentially. We try to award students grants and scholarships up front. So grants, the biggest scholarship we have, or grant source of funds that we have for grants is, of course, the federal Pell Grant. And then after that, the next source, those scholarships are coming from the state government. You have the North Carolina Community College Grant, and you also have the North Carolina Educational Lottery Scholarship. After that, we also try to award students as much institutional funds as possible. At AB Tech, our students are really fortunate because we have the enrollment scholarship, which we're able to award approximately $120,000 each year. And then we also have funds that are coming from our foundation scholarship. And I think Mark Newman last week told me it was roughly over $300 and something thousand last year. So we have a lot of our students who we're able to put into this category before we even get down here, when we're talking about what students need to be able to meet the cost of attendance to go to school at AB Tech. And then another thing that we want to emphasize, particularly at AB Tech, we're lucky and fortunate enough to receive $100,000 annually from the Department of Education to help students with work study. Work study is an opportunity for students to be able to get a job on campus, and we have a few jobs off campus where they can earn funds to help meet their college expenses as well. And then the last thing, after we've tried to give students as much grants, as much scholarships, and as much work study opportunity as possible, then we will say your last option is to try to determine whether or not you'll be eligible to receive federal direct loans. So that's our awarding philosophy here at AB Tech.
Did you say $100,000 comes from the Department of Education into work study?
Yes, we're very fortunate here. A lot of schools, particularly in the past couple of years, they've had their work study reduced significantly, but we haven't.
How does that work? Do we apply for that? Is
We
it
do.
something?
We apply for it. We have to do an annual report. It's called the Phys Out every October. And during that Phys Out, that's when you essentially are applying to receive work study funds. And there's also another grant. I didn't say anything about it because it's not a lot of money, particularly for a grant. It's federal SEOG, Supplemental Educational Grant Opportunity, and that's an additional $100,000 that we get here at AB Tech. But again, we're very fortunate at AB Tech because a lot of schools have had those two sources of funds reduced. But as long as you're showing that you're spending those funds each year, you're going to typically get that renewed the following year. So that's a really good opportunity here. Yes.
Brian, what is the average workload and how much money does each student get?
In regards to the work study?
Yeah, how many hours do they work and what's the rate?
The maximum number of hours a student can work is 19 hours here at AB Tech. And just on the average per semester, a student may be able to get an additional $1,500 to $2,000 a semester. So it's a really good opportunity for students. And we're able to give roughly anywhere 50 to 75 students the opportunity to participate in the federal work study program. So it's really good. Really good opportunity. The next slide, what I want you to be able to take from this is, when you're talking about federal direct loans, you're really talking about, it's really three. But here we're talking about sub and unsub. The other one is called plus loans, where parents can take out loans for their children. Subsidized loans, what you need to remember is that subsidized loans the federal government is paying the interest for the student while they're in school. Unsubsidized loans, the federal government is not paying the interest while the student is in school. So that's the key difference between these two types of loans. At AB Tech, you can see, and this information that we're presenting to you on this slide, all of this is from the 2012-2013 academic year. So from that year, for subsidized loans, we awarded approximately 1,800 students at roughly $5.9 million. And that average award was roughly $3,250. For unsub, we roughly awarded 1,574 students for $16.1 million. And that average came out to be $3,900.
So the total is $12 million for what
The total
we're
is
talking
$12 million.
about in federal loans.
Exactly. But one thing that I have to point out to you is that these two numbers are, it's okay, these are duplicates. So you have 1,800 and roughly 1,500. When you remove the duplicates, we're talking about roughly 1,800 students receiving federal direct loans at AB Tech.
Oh, that equals about $12 million total.
It's still going to equal to $12 million, but when we remove the duplicates, it's not really roughly 2,500 students. It's more like 1,800 students.
Done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Because you will have students that have Pell and also unsubsidized and also subsidized, so they could fall in all of those categories.
Exactly. This slide right here is just, we just want to give you an illustration of how much free money is really going out the door at AB Tech. This one is, it's not touching state grants at all. This is all federal Pell Grant. And for the 2012-2013 academic year, we awarded 4,416 students Pell Grants for a total of $14 million. And out of the 4,400 students, 11% of those students were students of color. We thought we should point that out as well. This slide is here because this is pretty much why we're here having this conversation. What is the default rate? That's what everybody wants to know. The default rate is as simple as possible that I can put into words is what this formula is. For the past, I'm trying to think how many years this has been known. Probably for the past 2 years, financial aid officers have been told by the Department of Education that this formula that we use to get our default rate was going to switch over from a 2-year rate to a 3-year rate. So you see here that AB Tech is projected that in September when these rates are released, that our rate will be 17.4. And you see here that the national average, 3-year average right now for default rate is around 20.9. So AB Tech currently is less than that national average. But how do we get this? Borrowers who entered repayment in 2011 and defaulted in 2011, 2012, 2013, I know that's very convoluted, divided by the borrowers who entered repayment in 2011 gives us this number. And what we want to remember is that we want that number to be under 30%. We really want that number to be under 25% because once you reach 25%, Department of Education, their eyes are going to zero in on your institution.
This is the U.S. Department of Education.
U.S. Department of Education, exactly. They're going to zero in on your institution a little closer than they probably have in the past once your school is approaching that 25%.
Brian, I'm going to offer my rebuttal. It may be good for me to give you some other numbers about this default rate while we're on that page, rather than waiting. Last year's release, which was based on loan repayments for 2011, showed an average default rate in the U.S. of 21.8% for for-profit sector. And one of the issues that we have is that the for-profits are grouped into this, and their default rate is very different. And I just saw something this morning, as late as this morning, that said that their rate had been exaggerated because their graduation rates were not calculated accurately. So this is a minefield of information. But to go ahead, the 2-year metric was 13.6% for the default rate. The 3-year rate was 13% for all public institutions, including 4-year institutions, and 8.3% at private nonprofit institutions. The 2-year rates were 9.6 at publics and 5.2 at privates. So I don't know how you got your 17.4 anticipated. I don't know how you arrived at that. But that is higher than your actual rate. And it suggests to me that there may be alarm before we need to be alarmed.
This rate right here is given to us from the U.S. Department of Education.
They give you what
they give us that every September. They publish, and you can see all schools' default rates published if you just do a simple Google search. But this is the rate that they're anticipating that we will have when it's released in September of 2014.
Well, let me just also tell you that Davidson Community College had a default rate of 41.6. Blue Ridge Community College had a default rate of 25%. And Western Piedmont had a default rate of 30%. So we are significantly below a number of our peers in the state of North Carolina.
We got a slide for you.
But I think the issue also is, and what we didn't have before, is that, and if it were, if we were at the 13 to 17% and that's where we thought we were going to stay, then I don't think there would be that big of an issue. It's the fact that we have been seeing this increase over the years, so it's as it's beginning to creep up, then we need to start paying attention so that we are not in the situation of being at the 30%, because like Brian said, once you start reaching a certain percentage, the federal government starts taking a closer look at you, and there are consequences, which he'll talk about in a little bit, for what could happen if you reach a certain percent, and what the Department of Ed could do to the college itself.
All right, for the second time, we'll go ahead and move on.
And this information right here, we wanted just to present a little bit of data so that you can know how the federal direct loan program, if we were to exit the program, how it would impact AV Tech. Again, this is information from the 2012-2013 academic year. 152 students were only eligible to receive direct loans. That means that these 152 students were not eligible for Pell. They were not eligible for the North Carolina State Community College. They were not eligible for the North Carolina Educational Lottery Scholarship. They did not receive an enrollment scholarship. They did not receive a scholarship through the foundation office. So it was 152 students. Out of the 152 students, 144 students were white. 8 of those students were of color. The average age was 28 years. 106 students were female, and 46 other students were male. So we just want to give you a snapshot again of those students who were only eligible to participate in the federal direct loan program at AV Tech in 2012-2013.
Brian, explain to the board real quickly why a student might not be eligible for a Pell Grant.
There's a number of reasons. The first thing that comes to mind, if you have a bachelor's degree, you cannot participate in the federal Pell Grant program any longer. That's the first thing that's going to eliminate you from receiving funds. Second thing is this one came down the pipeline maybe 3 years ago from the Department of Ed. You have a maximum time frame on Pell eligibility now. It used to be that you could earn a degree, slate is wiped clean, you can get more Pell Grants. But because the economy was in a recession, the feds changed that. So now they have a limit, and it's called lifetime Pell eligibility use. So students have 600% or roughly 12 full-time semesters to receive Pell Grant. So if they exceed 600% or 12 full-time semesters, they cannot get Pell.
So this slide kind of gives you a sense of the direction most community colleges are going as far as opting in or staying out of the, or staying in or opting out of the direct student loan program. As you can see, 22 of the 58 North Carolina community colleges are still participating in the direct student loan program. We tried to look at Western North Carolina colleges to get a sense of where they are. It's very contextual as far as from college to college, depending. The things driving default rates more than anything else are the local economy, whether students can get jobs to earn a good wage to be able to pay off that loan. So the unemployment rate is a big factor. So as you look at some of these colleges and their local economies, whether they're manufacturing, those colleges took a real big hit, so their default rates will naturally be a little bit higher because the unemployment rates are naturally higher in those areas. And then there's the underemployment rates, which we kind of face here in Buncombe County. But just to kind of give you a sense, Blue Ridge They're still in as of yesterday. They're closely monitoring and likely having a similar conversation like we are. Again, they're much smaller, so the percentage that actually do direct loans, but yet the percentage that might default. So their default rates, as Dr. Locke mentioned, are a little bit higher than ours are. Catawba Valley is still in. Southwestern Community College is in at the moment. They're going to stay in for the next year and hire on a third-party default management program to reach out to those students that are going into repayment to make sure that they're reminded that they need to pay their loans so their default rates can stay below that critical 25% range, as Melissa mentioned. Wilkes, the same. They're monitoring. They're going to go with one of the third-party default management programs, which we are researching at this time. Whether we stay in or opt out, we still need to look seriously at a third-party default management, because if we opt out, we still have these default rates that we have to manage. So we could still be monitored by the Department of Ed and potentially lose our ability to do Pell. Not participating over here, Surrey, Western Piedmont got out last year. Their enrollment took a slight hit as a result. Haywood Community College, they're opting out for this coming year, so July 1, they're officially out of the direct student loan business. Gaston College, my former institution, they have not participated in the direct student loan program since the late 90s. Their philosophical standpoint was that they're already low-cost tuition, and they support their students through a large foundation program. Cleveland Community College has been out since the late 90s. Mayland Community College got out last year. As a result, we got a lot of phone calls and a lot of students interested in AG Tag in our direct student loan program because of its proximity. Recently, the second largest community college in the state of North Carolina, Central Piedmont Community College, decided to opt out of the direct student loan program. Similar colleges to us, Fayetteville Tech Community College, Cape Fear Community Colleges, they had these similar conversations. They decided to stay in the direct student loan business. Yes, sir.
I sent an article to the trustees, and I don't have a copy of it, but in that article it suggested that North Carolina has the largest number of community colleges that are opting out. And I don't know what's going on in North Carolina to cause us to be this alarmist when other states are not having that. Now, I do understand, and I appreciate the fact that we don't control the process of these loans. Once a student is eligible for a loan, you have to give them the maximum amount. Is that correct?
If they request it.
Well, yeah, and they're going to request it. We don't have the ability to say that Don is coming in and Don needs $2,000, and David is coming in and David needs $1,800, and Ray is coming in and needs $1,200. If we qualify and we request it, we all get $2,400. That's a flaw in the system. The other point I'd like to make is that prior to 2011, colleges were allowed to withdraw. The North Carolina legislature in 2011 passed a law saying you must participate. And then last year, the legislature came along and said you don't have to participate. So this is a very political issue, and we need to be aware that we aren't simply debating this from our standpoint. And frankly, I don't understand, forgive me, I don't understand the reason that the state had to get in and dictate one way or the other.
I can tell you that because I was close to Raleigh then. There was a concerned student who called their legislator and complained because their school did not offer direct loans and said that it was preventing them access to their community college. And that was the reason why it went to the right person who had control, and that's how that law was passed. That's how it happened.
One person.
One person.
Well, I didn't know that because it troubled me that I couldn't find any rationale for the withdrawal.
We've reached out to the system office for that rationale, and they won't divulge that.
Thank you, Brian. I'm glad you were able to tell me that. I'm sorry that's the case, but I'm glad to know.
Another factor is supposedly once you opt out, you can't
can't get back in.
Yeah.
So what do y'all hear is the reason North Carolina is leading this movement of withdrawing?
Number one, we have 58 community colleges. We have a lot of
But
community colleges.
California has how many?
They have more than us, but we have one of the largest community college systems in the state, in the country. And the other thing is our economy. We have a lot of old, small towns where community colleges are located, and their economies are not in a place where their students taking out $10,000 plus in direct loans are going to be able to afford to repay those loans back, and they're not thinking it's worth the risk to take that gamble.
Don, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you exactly why I think the legislature has an interest. We're one of the states in the nation that funds community colleges. So that's why they pay close attention to what happens in the system. Other states don't, because they don't fund them. They don't care.
Well, I would point
That's
out.
the reason.
I would point out that simultaneous to all this, in a News and Observer article of December 28, it's reported that North Carolina went from being the 26th poorest state to being number 11 poorest state in the nation. That's distressing to me because it parallels whether or not we're going to be supportive of people who no longer have access to resources to go to school.
That's like the Wilkes County. If you look at the Wilkes County thing, it's amazing they're still participating, because you had the major Brindles, you had Lowe's just moved to Charlotte, and that was big. That was their home offices and all that. So, you know, they took a big hit in that small area. So.
And of course, what you said, Dr. Luck, about the kind of lumping it in, this is also sort of the consequences down the road, that a lot of the things that you see community colleges being held to are really driven by trying to punish the for-profits. But the for-profits then say, well, if you're going to do that to us, then you need to do it to other people that offer the same type of training. And so that's where community colleges come in. So we end up getting put in the same pool, but it's a very different, obviously very different profile. We are not nearly as expensive as the for-profits are, and so it's we're being held to these standards that make it difficult we want to be able to support our students, we want them to have access, but we're really on two separate playing fields, and so that's what another reason that it makes it hard for some of these federal rules.
Well, I think I said to the trustees that I had been in a meeting with these folks and the president about this, and I learned in that meeting a shocking reality. There is a student who is currently suspended from AB Tech who has accrued an aggregate loan of $52,557. Did you hear me? $52,557. And when the president shared this with me, I said, this is impossible. But what I learned is that this could be, I don't know the name, and they didn't share with me the name. It's simply I have a number, and a student number. I'm not going to look him up.
We don't know if it was a guy or a girl.
No, I'm kidding. But the point is, this person could have gone to UNC Asheville for 4 years, had student loans to get a baccalaureate degree, and then came to AB Tech and started. Their debt follows them wherever they are. So we become responsible for them, even though we have had nothing to do with them accumulating that debt. I think you said the maximum was
$57,500.
57. So if a person came here and went 4 years, you'd say, at most. I just say they went 4 years, and they could do that because they could go in one program and get a degree and go in another program. Maybe about $20,000. And we have a number of those on the list of the high people.
That's an outlier, though. I mean,
but it's there. And I think the trustees need to know that person is very, and I don't know the person, is very likely to default on that loan. The other thing that's important is bankruptcy does not remove you from the obligation of federal student loans. That's really important to know, so that when people come in, they get money, and they're going to owe this until they die. And according to the news last night, the IRS is now going after grandchildren to collect debts. So this is serious in my mind.
Now, they can't do that in this case. Once a person
Well,
dies,
we don't know.
If they change the law, I guess you can.
Well, if they change, you never know what they might do.
But you can't declare bankruptcy and get out of the loan. This loan will be there forever.
So if somebody defaults, what is AB Tech's exposure?
Our exposure is, we cannot allow that number to go over 30%. If it goes over 30% for 3 years consecutively, we lose our federal Pell, and we can also lose our of course, we're going to lose our federal direct loan program. That's what happens.
The department
Three
sees it
consecutive
as a measure of institutional control, is how they term it. Kind of like in athletics, if you get so many sanctions, then you've lost institutional control. So even though the students at fault, we take the brunt, like Melissa said, it's because of the proprietary, which their default rates are now higher than their graduation rates at a lot of these proprietary schools that we're having to stress and worry about this.
Another thing that I learned in reading, and this just blew me away. What do you think is the discipline, I guess you call it a discipline, that has the highest default in the United States for as a training program? I don't know if I'm asking the question right. What program would students be in who would have the highest default rate? Cosmetology. Who said that?
Right here.
It's cosmetology. It has the highest default rate in the United States. And most of those are in proprietary schools that are for profit.
Well, their job, when they get a job, they don't make a lot.
And they don't make any money.
Okay, your question. I don't think your question was about, is there a financial liability related to the loans?
There
Not
could
the
be.
loss of the program.
That's a financial liability to the college. If we can't offer Pell, this school, I don't think it's going to be able to operate.
Well, I think she's asking if the loan
Cash
defaults.
Do we have to pay money
Yes.
back? No, we don't have to pay
Not
anything
yet.
back.
Sounds like,
Yeah.
you want to
I thought there was
explain
a
the
point that if they didn't go to
RTP4?
a point that we had to pay a percentage.
So we do have to pay a percentage back, but it's not dealing with this subject matter. It's another subject matter that's called Return to Title IV. So if we award funds to students, and Lisa Evans, I know she wants me to say something about this one. If we reward Pell to students and they don't attend at least 60% of the term, then we have to do a calculation, and we have to return back what that calculation saying that the student did not earn.
Return
The
immediately
40%.
to the federal
Within
government.
45
And
days.
we can collect it from the students as best we can. You will see later this afternoon, a request to you to write off some money that we have not been able to collect from students.
so
Lisa, the loan program is also covered by RTP4 during the semester.
Yes.
Yes. That means that if a student picks up a loan, let's say in the first, second week, and then drops out of school, the student is not authorized that loan, and the R2T4 program, R, return to federal government, Title IV, then we are responsible for returning that loan money. Now, of the total pool of loan money, what I'm talking about is relatively small, but the larger pool of the student who graduates and then defaults on his loan, that becomes the student's responsibility, not ours.
what was our default rate last year?
Well, last year we were calculated off of a 2-year percentage. And the 2-year was 13.8, somewhere along in there. The year before that, you know what it was? Around 7%.
It has been as low as 5%.
Say that one more time.
Around 7%. It shot up.
13.8.
Yep, 13.8.
If you can put that in the context of the economy, in 2009 when we crashed, a lot of people came to college, got direct student loans, so we tripled the amount of loans that we've dispersed since 2009 till now. And then too, when they went to the 3-year versus the 2-year, every college's default rate basically went up by 5 percentage points on average. Because that gives them longer time to
then we'll let the board discuss it.
All right, so potential benefits of participation in the direct student loans have implications for students and the college. So potential benefits for students is that direct student loans provide access that may be not available if the student just receives Pell, in particular for low to middle income students. As you know, the cost of attendance here in Asheville, cost of housing and living in general is very, very high in comparison to most other cities of similar size. So these students need that little bit of extra money above and beyond the Pell to attend college, pay for cost of attendance. Also, unmet need. Students, like Brian said, that have baccalaureate degrees are ineligible for federal student aid, Pell Grants in particular, or that have exceeded that 600% lifetime eligibility. They could still be eligible for direct student loans. So if we get out of the direct student loan business, it could impact access for some of these students that are reverse transfers from the four-year college that are coming back to get a skill, to get a job. Also, potential enrollment boost. As I mentioned, Malin, when they got out of the loan business, some of their students started looking at other colleges that provided direct student loans. Also, the better loan terms is a potential benefit for students in comparison to private lenders. The interest rates are much lower. On the subsidized loan, the government pays the interest for the students until they go into repayment. So while the students enrolled at least half-time or full-time in college, in 6 months after they either stop out or graduate, the government pays the interest on that loan. To receive the loan, and this could be a pro or a con, there's no credit check or cosigner to be able to receive a direct student loan. Direct student loans could be used for students if they're used wisely to establish good credit. Interest may be tax deductible depending on the individual student's circumstances. And there's also several repayment plans, including income-based. So the student who graduates gets a job that's not paying a whole lot. They just take out a certain percentage of their salary.
And under the consequences, obviously, the student loan debt, and I think that's one of the things that's difficult for all of us, is that we are a low-cost educational institution, and some of our students are coming out with tens of thousands of dollars of debt that they probably will never be able to repay, given the type of program that they may have been in. Their credit ratings obviously will take a hit if they default on that loan. They won't be able to re-enroll in any college with unpaid student loan debt. So that will keep them from being able to progress further if they want to go forward. Less enrollment, sometimes if you say we're not going to participate in that, students will say, well, I can't come. I can't come if I can't get additional money, and so they may not show up at the college. Again, possible sanctions, like Brian said, depending on if it's they have to go back to R2T4 if they haven't completed, say, the term. The college would be responsible. If our default rate gets too high, then we have the potential for losing Pell, and that's always kind of the thing that hangs out there. Even like with accreditation and SACs, you do not want to lose Pell, because that really is your lifeline to all the students that need help. Increased college accounts receivable, that's the issue we were talking about with what the college is responsible for if the student does not finish a semester and has loan debt. And sometimes public relations, we can get some negative public relations if we're not supporting student access in that way. I'll go back to the previous slide about the no credit, you don't have to go back there, about the no credit check. I consider that to be a consequence that's in the negative, because, if you don't, that's sort of how that whole 2008 thing got started. You were loaning money to people that probably shouldn't have gotten a loan. So if you don't have to have a credit check, and we have no way of monitoring, and we don't have any way to say, we'll only give you X amount of money, you can borrow whatever you want, then the student will borrow usually the maximum. And in that case, now they're having a lot more money than what it would have cost to come to AV-TAC, and they'll be in the debt and perhaps not be able to pay that in the long run. So those are the consequences of doing that. Any other questions?
The thing that I don't understand is the means test. So I heard it mentioned on, who makes the decision if that student gets a loan? And is there not a means test for need?
There is not.
Well, can you change it?
The federal government dictates that.
They dictate the means test? Or they
Absence
give
of
anybody that?
Yeah.
One of the other things too is that interest rate on, I think it's the unsubsidized is the one that you cannot refinance that loan. There was an article recently that said you go out and borrow money for a fancy sports car, and if you get in trouble, you can go back and refinance. But if you borrow money for college, and that way, that loan rate is set, and you can't go back and refinance it for a lower rate now. So that's also an issue that students have. Whatever that rate is, that's the rate that's set, and there's no way to bargain it down.
And that's subject to the federal
Let me
regulation.
see, I understand then that you want it to be below 25% of the new formula. You're working on a 3-year average, is that right?
That's correct.
And so it seems to me then that you have 3 choices. One of them is don't do it. One of them is do it. And the other one is do it but monitor, so that you still can manage the Pell threat by making a decision on a year-to-year basis based on the default rate.
That's correct.
Okay.
The default rate, if we do opt out, this default rate still do impact the institution. So all these colleges that have opted out, they still have to manage that default rate. And so even they are going to these third-party default management programs, which either way we need to do here at AB Tech. But yeah, you're correct in those 3 choices.
But you could come to a point, if we said, well, let's do it another year and take a look at it next year, then you could pull the plug next year.
That's correct.
If you thought there was a threat.
Right. The only thing, if we do, we still got to manage that default. It still stays with you. That's correct.
But like Dr. Locke was talking, for one person, whoever it is, $52,000, can't we start looking at things like that?
Yes, sir.
Come in to try to make sure that.
That's what the default management people
that's
do.
what that program
They
is.
identify those at-risk students, and they reach out to those students to kind of coach
That's
them.
what that would be. That's what would be a help. Okay.
Couldn't we offer some sort of, on the front end, when the student comes in to apply, couldn't we offer on the front end some mentoring at that time about, let's figure out what the minimum amount is you should borrow, so you take that as a teaching opportunity?
They have to do that. They have to go through entrance counseling. And the thing is that there's nothing that requires that student to actually read the information. But all of that counseling is provided to the student on the front end.
They're going to come sit in the room, they're going to get money for it.
I have a lot that I want to say, and I think I'm going to start off by saying I come down on Bill's third option, which is continue with monitoring, because I think that the federal government is anticipating 17% default. I think if we monitor it, we could at some point remove ourselves and not be penalized. But let me start by saying, as I started researching this, and I probably could write a book on federal student loans with the amount of information I have read. And I am unhappy about lots of things that I have found. At first I thought I was going to say, well, everybody says we're student focused and therefore we should do this. But as I read and listened to Melissa, I think Melissa is also student focused, because it's based on whether or not we're focused on the students who get the loans now, or whether we're focused on the students who would be denied Pell Grants in the future. So we both share that, and that has been something that has helped me in my process to realize that we're not anti-student when we say we're wrestling with this. But the community college system has for years focused on access, getting people in. Today we focus on success. And that means that we're trying to figure out how to get people graduated, completed, so that our graduation rate is something higher than 20-some%. When we hear that, we say, oh, that can't be right. But it is. And as a result, we have to figure out ways to ensure that students who come here are getting an education and that they're going to be able to secure decent employment, and that they're going to be able to repay the loans and debts that they make. Just on April 4th, the GOP 2015 budget plan that Paul Ryan introduced set a maximum for Pell Grants at $5,730. that's a significant cut, which means if we cut Pell Grants and we take away the loan, these students are going to be in worse trouble when you start thinking about it. On April 8th, Representative Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, the top Democrat on the House Budget Committee, would, among other things, authorize a student loan debt refinancing program and expand loan repayment options, which would offer some opportunity for students who are out there to get through this process. I think there are three principles that ought to guide our decision making, and the first is that we ought to base our decision on research and evidence. The evidence is that we have never defaulted more than 13%. We haven't defaulted 17% yet, even though that's what the government says we may default. Next year, if they went 4%, that would be 21%, which means we still wouldn't be at 25, and the cutoff is 30. So we've got a long way to go. Even if students defaulted at an increased rate of 4 additional percentages a year, we have 3 years before we get to the absolute cutoff place. And I think we need to use those numbers wisely in whatever decision we make. We also need to figure out a way of counseling people on the front end about what all this means and what their responsibility is, not only to themselves, but to other students who may be denied access to an education if they themselves default. I think that's a part of being a member of a community, that we need to include that part of the conversation. And finally, we need to acknowledge that much of this is outside of our purview. Much of the problem is a problem that is given to us by the federal government. They tell us how much money to give them, and we don't have any control over that. The means test, which you ask about. I think we have to acknowledge that and say we operate within that environment, but we're going to figure out how to operate efficiently. If we withdraw from the program, I'm convinced that students will be in more debt. Even if some students are not getting a great return on their education investment, most college graduates are still better off than high school graduates. Every bit of literature that I have seen says that if you have a 2-year degree, you make more money in a lifetime than you make if you're a high school graduate. Secondly, poor students will get it worse. And that's why I mentioned the article from the News and Observer that says North Carolina now ranks number 11 in the country in terms of poor states. So our students are getting poorer, poor people are getting poorer. And without a government guarantee, I'm afraid that our local banks, forgive me, Mr. Spells, no problem. I'm afraid that our banks will treat student loans like any other kind of transaction. And the safest borrowers will get the best results, and the high-risk borrowers will get the worst results. And I think that's a business model. I'm not being critical of the bank for making money. I have stock in Wells Fargo. I also believe that if we withdraw from the program, more students will drop out. Students who borrow have significantly lower dropout rates than students who try to go through school debt-free. And there are data to demonstrate that. There might be a few reasons for this. People who work long hours, go to school part-time, and delay enrolling until later in life all tend to have trouble finishing school. These are the sorts of things low-income students do. And that's what we are fighting for here. If it's protection that students need, I ask, why would we take away the safest borrowing option available to them? If it's protection that these students need, why would we take away the safest borrowing option and force them to go to a commercial institution and go into a competitive market? I don't remember from which website I read this, but this is a web statement from a community college. Quote, currently, our institution does not participate in the federal student loan program. However, you can independently get a private loan or non-certified loan to help pay for your educational expenses if you meet the lender's requirements. That's scary to me if I had to go in to Wells Fargo or any other institution and compete for that type of loan. So my final statement is, if we want to protect our students, we need to keep this policy in place. We need to monitor it carefully, and at such time when it becomes likely that our default rate will exceed 30% over 3 years, then I'd be in favor of withdrawing from the program.
I think we're gonna really be in trouble.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we continue student loans, and we make a commitment to continue for a year, and then revisit it next year and manage our debt load along the lines of what Dr. Locke has mentioned here.
Second.
Any further discussion, questions, comments?
The only thing I think on the thing where we were so low, and that's when we went into recession, is a lot of people went back to school. But they didn't just go back to school to go back to school. They went back because there's money that helped keep them surviving through a period. So this is where some of your numbers is coming from. I may be totally wrong, but that's the way I felt.
Now there's one other piece of this that I want you to investigate. In the process of doing this, there's an organization called Hire One. And I want to tell you how I learned about Hire One. I go to lunch on Fridays with a group of friends, and we call ourselves, it's a therapy group. And whenever I have a problem, I bring it up to them and say, what do you think about federal student loans? And we have wonderful discussion. And one of my lunch buddies says, wait a minute, I'm paying on that. And he pulls out this card from his wife's debt to Hire One, who manages our federal financial aid distribution. And I've got an article on them.
Are you saying
Hire, H-I-G-H-E-R-O-N-E, Hire One. What they do, as I understand it, is they come to AB Tech now, and they take our $5 million, and they put it on debit cards and distribute it to our students. However, these debit cards are dangerous because they have exorbitant fees if they use them any place except the 2 kiosks on this campus. Am I right so far?
there are now 30 kiosks in town if you have the premium account?
If you have the premium account. I had never heard of them, but this friend of mine pulled out his card and said that his wife got in trouble because she didn't understand all of the repercussions of her loan. What she did was she used her money for things that it's allowed to be used for, but it was non-educational expenses. And now they have this tremendous debt to Hire One. So I want to investigate them as well. Because the option is that we would distribute our own checks at AB Tech to students without regard to funneling it through this organization.
May I say, because we went rounds when Hire One when we first went into service, and we had students that were upset. I was upset. I disagreed with everything. Did a lot of research. I've got stacks on my desk. The student at the end of the day is a college student and has the responsibility to read the contract, read the information, just like they would with any other bank account. And when you read that, you can find out that you can have your return can be deposited immediately directly into your own personal savings account. There's ways of working. There's student responsibility there. But there are higher fees. There are traps if you're not careful.
I just don't think that if people are borrowing money for education, they ought to be allowed to use it to go down and make a down payment on a car.
They're not supposed to.
But so I don't understand.
They can do that though.
You can't stop.
Their money.
But
You can't stop them, that's it.
As a school, can't.
If they tell us that on the front
monitor
end.
that? Can't we say, well, we'll use this to pay the account at the school and that's it?
No.
Well, that's crazy.
That's why I say we operate within the government's guidelines that they give us, and we can't do anything about that.
Well,
and I'm not of the
should try.
Yeah,
I'm not of the opinion, Jane, that we ought to just assume that these are all adults who can manage their money wisely. I know people who are 70 years old who don't manage their money wisely.
It would be nice if Hire One offered, if there was an option for savings, if you had a savings account through them.
Well, I want us to, I mean, I didn't know anything about this until this came up, and now I'm, you know, once I know very little about it. I don't know a lot about it, so I'm admitting that. But I want us to investigate that because I think we may be at that part contributing to some of the mismanagement of funds by using that particular firm.
I can say that we are not paying Hire One. And many, was it 40%? What is the number of colleges and universities that are going to this system?
To Hire One?
Do any of the banking, automatic, the card?
That's where the majority of schools are, at least they can speak to
that.
that point.
And we're one of
Say
the
that
few,
you mentioned
Hire
about
One's
college.
actually one of the few that's not charging AV. We don't pay AV Tech, or AV Tech doesn't pay Hire One, which is in the minority.
Yeah.
Well, I asked the question when I met with the president, did we get a rebate from them for using them?
We say the cost of a staff person because they manage and disperse that.
They
money.
manage the disbursement.
Or maybe two staff people, I don't know, at least.
Lisa would know that.
One or two, yeah, I mean, it just depends on in which process we are. If we're writing checks, it's a one-person job. When you disperse the checks, if you do it manually, it's a two-person or more job because you get 500 and 600, 1,000 students lined up just as soon as you start dispersing them.
1,200, really.
44, we're paying.
1,241.
So, you know, it just depends on which point you're at. I mean, we save an awful lot in postage, we save in resources. Students don't lose the check. The check is not misdirected by the mail, so that we don't have to reissue checks. A lot of times people's checks are stolen and, you know, we have to deal with that.
Well, let me just say about Hire One, I would encourage each of you to go to the Hire One website and look at it, and it'll tell you the fees. And one of the things that I found is a $50 lack of documentation fee for students who fail to submit some paperwork. This to me is exorbitant. I mean, and again, I don't know, I haven't used it, never heard of it until 3 weeks ago.
They refused to release a fee schedule to student government. We wanted to have that information in the office, and they said it changes too frequently. Every other month, their information is changing, and they will not release that to us.
That's not good.
Well, that's my concern. I wanted to also share that with you because I think that's a part of the loan program.
I think the motion should be amended because I agree with the motion, but I think we should say that we need to put somebody on researching this.
Can it be two separate?
I think they need to be separate.
Yeah.
Separate motions.
Okay, however, but I'd like to see, I mean, I just think we need to be offering great mentoring to our students so that the ones who are serious about getting ahead in life don't get, you know, hoodwinked.
Well, they need to be able to utilize the money that they're getting instead of,
Smartly.
you know, here they're getting government money that's going to pay money back to the government. But then we got a company that's going to take government money away from them if they just screw up one little thing that costs them $50 here, $50 there. And these fees that they're taking out, if they go somewhere it's not exactly where it's supposed to be, who's profited? It's not the student.
That's right.
You know.
I think the maximum amount you can pull out in a day when you first get your disbursement is $2,500 with a fee of $85. Just to get,
Just get the 25.
because people get their money and they need to pay rent or, you know, whatever's come up, and $85.
So these are the things that just, when I heard this, I'm going, I can see how someone can get in financial difficulty. You're dealing with a person who is already poor. You give them $5,000 and they think they're going to get this every week, and so they spend it that way.
That's an educational program.
Yeah, there needs to, yeah.
Our responsibility.
Yeah.
There's smart ways of handling it, but if they're aware.
Is there a way that, what smarter way that we can handle it?
Yeah.
If I could make a suggestion, I've heard very clearly from the board that you'd like us to take a look at our involvement with the Hire One program. we'll be delighted to do that. We can bring you back some information at the next meeting as to what it would cost us essentially in the business office to start issuing the checks again ourselves instead of using Iowa. But
Iowa's
so
also one of the best
I don't think
companies
we
out
need
there.
a motion for that. We can just go ahead and do that.
Meeting in 2 weeks. 5/1 is our next meeting.
Yes.
2 weeks away.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to take that long. When I was in student services, that was about 3 years ago, we had just started the program, so I don't say about 3 years.
I don't want to hurt anybody.
Call for the question. Call for the question. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm not done.
If I could just add,
Could
this
we
is.
commend the staff for an excellent report?
What I wanted to add was exactly that. This is the system working the way it's supposed to. The board sets policy, we administer policy. That's why I tried to stay out of the discussion here. It's up to us now to administer the policy for you.
Next is student unpaid debt.
Okay, I'll start real briefly and then give the ball to Lisa. For as long as I worked at the college, up to about 2005 or so, we were bringing to you annually a list of debt, student debt that we needed to write off because we had not been able to collect it. We did this on an annual basis because we did everything that we could to collect the debt. For some reason, that process stopped, and so I've asked Lisa Evans to again start bringing to you annually the debt that students owe to us that we have done everything we can to collect and have been unable to collect. Lisa?
I'm asking that you give us permission to write off $278,000 in debt. This is 516 students, that's all. And roughly 40,000 of those dollars belong to the college. The remaining dollars belong to the state. So the state's portion would be like $238,000. So, you know, we can absorb the 40,000. It's not a nice thing for us to have to do, but we can over a period of time. I brought a few graphs and charts, what it's all about. This balance includes outstanding accounts as far back as 2005. Our last actual write-off was in June 30, 2007 was the last time we brought forward to the board a list. These are in this list because we have to have a cutoff point. So in here, our cutoff is 2010 for asking you to give us permission to write these off. We have turned them over to the Department of Revenue to collect from people's tax returns. We have issued invoices every month to a month and a half. We have done everything that we need to do by the community college's regulations for that. And the last step would be to get y'all's approval. And so, if you would please.
You may have said this.
Yes.
As of that point in time, what percentage of that represented the total outstanding receivables?
At that time?
Yeah, because this has been a very low number. That's the 1%.
Oh, yes. No, it's more than 1%, but I don't have the cumulative AR at that time, other than just this amount. This is like 100% of the debt at that time that we have not collected.
You may have said this, and I missed it. What's been the last few years? Does this mirror what we've been seeing?
No, sir. this is the graph, I don't know if y'all can see it. But you see that great big green peak right there? And we've been letting you know that we have over $1 million in accounts receivable. Well, that's part of it. That's 2012, 13, when we did this jump.
Wow. So you said we are 200 and some is state debt? Do we have the authority to waive the debt for the state?
What we do is we get your permission, and then we forward that to the state. And then the state makes a decision on whether or not we can write these off.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that.
Does it have to go?
Seems unusual that we would be writing it off for the state.
It's gonna go through 3 steps. Doesn't it have to go to the full board of community colleges before it goes to either revenue or auditor's office? I forgot which one it goes to. It doesn't go directly to.
Our request will now go to the state board.
That's what I thought.
State board,
It's a
okay.
3-step thing, I think, or 4.
Okay, I move that we,
Before I have one question. Do we know, or can you tell me who wrote this bad check for $6,700? Is it a company, is it a person, or?
And these are generally people, they're students, and that's a cumulative amount of bad checks.
Oh, okay,
Which would, although it's not on the agenda, I would ask that you consider that we don't take checks anymore.
so how were they paid then?
With their debit cards.
Or
with their Visa, or with their financial aid, or, you know. Official checks.
Bank checks?
When we last looked into that, it was cost prohibitive.
We don't pay costs.
We don't pay the cost, they do.
No, they pay the cost. Yeah, it's just a cashier's check.
Yeah, just a cashier's
certified
check.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. I thought you meant those machines that
So
you
you
just
want-
run the check through and it checks the balance.
You want us to you want us to recommend that students not be able to write checks at all?
Yes.
I'm not sure I would
You want them to?
I don't think right now,
I'm
that's
sorry,
not
I
part
didn't
of.
mean to make this discussion just an awareness.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that needs to come to us.
That needs to come in another way.
We need a
Yeah.
little more backup on
With the higher one discussion.
it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay, I move, whatever is written in there, that we write off the $278,000 debt and forward it to the next entity.
Second.
Have a first and a second. Any,
First, the second.
sorry, motion and a second, sorry. I'm tired. That's so many restaurants, I'm tired, sorry. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Guess I'm talking about more first and second.
First, second, first mortgage on your first one.
Okay, on to, we've already done the name and opportunity, so to trustee business. Don, you want to give us an update on presentation? We did in private session. So we'll-
Mr. Chair, the search committee has done its duty and presented to the Board of Trustees the names of 28 applicants, and the Board of Trustees has identified 8 people as semifinalists, and that is the end of the report.
And we'll move forward to the next part of the process. Thank you very much. Okay.
Is that all right, Mr. Campbell?
That is perfect.
Report on the NCA CCT law seminar that was last week. We had Bill Hart, Kay Myers, Mike Fryer, David White, and myself that went to that meeting last week. It was very good. I know Bill's got some notes that he would like to share with us, and if anybody else wants to.
I'm going to share very briefly. One of the sessions of North Carolina Association of Community College attorneys that Mr. Campbell established, but one of the things they talked about is the Clery Act, Sexual Violence Elimination Act, and this is going to create some new standards for campuses. It's designed to prevent sexual violence. It's going to do it through promotion and awareness, reporting, in how to investigate, how to report. And of particular interest to me that colleges will do an annual security report. This will be due in October. I think there'll be a 3-year rolling report. Dr. King, we may have seen those once upon a time, but as a trustee, I'd like to see that in the future. But this is a good thing in the sense that it's creating levels of awareness and campus protection that we haven't had before. So the other thing that Chad Donahue of Campbell Shadley prevented impact of the Affordable Care Act on community colleges. And the takeaway from that is, I'm glad I don't have to comply with that.
If you weren't confused before that seminar, you were confused.
It is detailed, and he did a nice job with it, but it helps you appreciate the complexity of what's going on. Interesting discussion on the short session of the legislature that begins in May, presented by Representative Edgar Starnes, who's the House Majority leader, and the kind of things they're concerned about. Is the budget. They're concerned about the over expenditure of Medicare. They're concerned about a revenue shortfall. You know, we had a tax reform. Collections are down. I guess tomorrow we'll know, and a year from now we'll know the full impact of that. But the legislature is concerned about that because it depends on how much money they have. They talked about, he said, like to do some pay increase for state employees, but it's questionable about how they will do that. Another concern is COLAs. There was another session that was interesting. Gentleman from Tennessee. Tennessee has a formula for performance funding of community colleges, and I came away distinctly uncomfortable with that, to try to put together a formula where you put everything into a formula on how you operate your colleges. Tennessee has a much smaller system, but I was distinctly bothered by that. Well, we did this, but we realized we should have done this and that. And I've always thought when you try to define things to a strict formula, that takes away some of the reasoning that we as trustees need to exercise. Bob Joyce, who always done entertaining programs, legal issues on trustee reappointments. The North Carolina Association of Community College Trustee meeting, and I'm always interested in the budgets for organization, and our state association has a budget next year of about $465,000. So that gives you just the idea of how they operate. They had a legislative panel and talking about the scope of the legislature, and they have people who are very conservative, people who are liberal, people who are in the middle. They're concerned about the length of the session. One of the questions was whether or not Tom Tillis, who is running for Senate, would remain as the Speaker of the House, and they raised the interesting question under ethics law. You know, we can't take payments, and how do you run for office and take donations? And so that was purely speculative with no answers. But they're talking about the Medicare overruns, talking about teachers' pay, that desire to do something, and said, well, maybe a third of the teachers, those in the first 10 years of service, would get something, and maybe if others were patient, maybe later. COLASH came up again on that. Revenue shortfall came up again. And then there was a roundtable discussion, and Joe and I sat at a table with Senator Jerry Tillman, who's over a good many of the financing things. And the thing you come away with that is that community college, people like community college. It's very clear that the university system is getting close scrutiny. But community colleges were seen as a source of economics. But at the same time, I raised the question about pay, opportunities for pay for faculty and staff members, and you know, I think they would like to do something, but there's really not much encouragement there. The final thing that I came away with among community colleges in North Carolina, those who are as fortunate as AV Tech with good resources and comprehensive programs have a lot to be thankful for, that some of the community colleges and some of the less developed portions of the state are really having a hard time. So that's
Dave or David or Mike, any additions to, I think Bill did a very good recap of the whole session.
I went to Linda Johnson's table. Linda, I think, was responsible for articulation. She laid that pie, and that's a much better opportunity for our students now in transferring to the university system. And besides that discussion, the main discussion was the public education, as opposed to vouchers, charter schools, that type of thing. And someone said there again, to talk about money, there's not money for to spend what needs to be spent on public education and teacher pay. And someone said, you need to look at it that you can afford not to. Public education has made this country the envy of every other country in the world. It was a very good session. I mean, the whole conference.
Well, the one thing that I got out of it is the 2 hours that we spent in ethics, my brain was broke. But David and Joe were in there with me on that. But then I went to an orientation for new trustees, and in it, the main thing was a college president, how to retain one, how to do this and that in that particular deal. And I learned a lot in that. I didn't get to stay right into these people because my wife's mother's got cancer, so I came back Thursday evening. Wished I could stay longer, but that first 2 hours, I thought my brain was mush when I came out. I learned a lot quickly.
I thought the sessions were extremely informative this year. I particularly like the panel discussions. And for me, it was different in a lot of ways because of the loss of Mark Nesbitt. I had so many people who, still wanted to talk about that, but I think the scary part was when they mentioned who they would elect to go in as the minority replacement for Martin. I was bothered with some of that. But other than that, I think the meetings went extremely well. And there's no business from being on the state board that, particularly alarming.
Thank you very much. On to President's report.
Okay, number of things that I want to share with you. The Buncombe County WIA, or I guess it's Western North Carolina WIA, has given us a contract for $550,000 to be their operator here in the county. We're real pleased with that. That was the good work of Shelley White in the back of the room. Shelley, raise your hand. Okay, we turned in our SACS-focused report on time. We had one item you might remember that we had to report on, and I think, and I'm speaking now from having worked for SACS for 23 years and being on 23 different committees for them, I'm speaking a little bit of background here when I say I think our people did an outstanding job on that report. I can't imagine that they would not accept it as acceptable. That was the good work of Gene Laughlin and Fiona Bristol, neither of whom are here with us. High school visitation was last Friday. We had 650 screaming 18-year-olds on campus. We fed them lunch. We showed them everything that we could about AV Tech. And let me see, we had, I believe it was 9 high schools here represented with those 650 students. The night before, so as to utilize the same setup in the gymnasium, we had 500 people here for our open house. So between the two, 1,150 people passed through the campus. This was the excellent work of Lisa Bush, Mike Dempsey, and both of these folks in enrollment management worked for Terry Brazier, whom you met earlier. Terry, raise your hand.
I'd like to acknowledge Carrie's work as well in marketing of these events. So
thank you.
It's definitely a collaborative event, and the concept of combining the open house with the job forum and the alumni fairs and their work really paid dividends with the attendance at the open house.
I attended the job fair, and it's always just a very great thing to walk away and see that.
A couple grants we picked up. We've got $200,000 from Golden Leaf coming in for the General Electric Aviation project. That money is in our possession now. On the 16th, Wednesday the 16th, that's 2 days hence, out at the Anka campus at 1:30, we're going to receive $195,000 from Duke Energy. Duke is making friends, and they're making friends with us by giving us $195,000 for our brewing, distillation, fermentation program. You all are welcome to be there. We have also been approved to receive direct gifts from the student or the state employee combined campaign. So if anybody wants to make a donation to AV Tech, they now can do that through the state employee combined campaign. Master facilities planning, we are deeply into that one. Dave White, Dave, raise your hand back there. Dave White is leading the administrative aspect of the master facilities planning, and Joe Bass, who's there also, I believe. Joe is handling the professional engineering architectural aspect of it. There will be 12 sessions for employees over the next couple of days. So any employee who says to you he didn't get the opportunity to participate in the master facilities plan is telling you a fib. There will be 12 sessions. There will be an additional session for students, and the Board of Trustees will have, we'll try to keep the agenda for the May meeting abbreviated so that they can come to that meeting. Now, we moved the date today, I understand, from the 12th until the 1st, but we will try to have them here. They were going to be here for the May meeting. We'll try to have the planners here with you to get your ideas as to what you'd like to see done to the campus. You'll also get the end report in, well, probably September, October. I'm going to skip that one. I thought I was going to give you good news up until about an hour before this meeting that the doctors over here on 111 Victoria Road were willing to sell their building to us. They have backed out now and said that a couple of the docs want to stay in the practice for at least one more year. But the good news is that they turned to us first about selling 111 Victoria rather than even putting it on the market. And I think it's fair to say that the county was very receptive to that potential purchase. So a year from now, we may be bringing back 111 Victoria to you as a purchase. We have a better than a lead. We have a gentleman who is about ready to move all of his money out of the community foundation and into the AV Tech Foundation. That would be someplace in the vicinity of $350,000. It appears that he can do that. He's a very bright man, a local businessman who's been doing very well, and it appears that he would like to use that money through the foundation for scholarships for our students. And I hope to be reporting to you next month that we've picked up another $350,000 in the foundation. I had an excellent meeting with Dr. Lunsford for the first time out at, well, let me reword that. I had an excellent meeting with Dr. Lunsford out at Mars Hill a couple days ago. I guess it was the end of last week. And we have agreed to stay at our Southside Center, which we share with them, for one additional year. And our concerns about how little of the property we were being allowed to use have been allayed by him. He said that by all means we can have much more use of the facility than we have had. We've only had 2 large classrooms and 1 small classroom, and that's really not enough to make that a viable operation. On the other hand, many of their classrooms sit empty out there during the day, and we can use them according to him now. So I feel real good about our relationship with Mars Hill out on Airport Road, and we'll be in it for another year. That's about everything that I have. We do have some handouts for you, and let's start with the annual report, Karen.
While she's doing that, I have a couple of things I wanted to mention as well. AB Tech is one of the anchor institutions in a consortium of organizations around town that are working to increase the attraction and presence of people of color in our environments. And I was happy to learn that AB Tech was a partner in that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that on April, my phone just stopped. I think it's April 28th at April 28th at 12:30. As a part of Asheville's Stand Against Racism, there will be a panel discussion in the Ferguson Auditorium. And I hope, I'll be out of town that day, but I wanted to make you aware of that in case, so that at least 1 or 2 trustees could show up there and offer their support.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Good.
You want to say anything about
No, I was
what
just
you did?
handing out the annual report. It's the information that you are used to receiving, and obviously it is for the previous fiscal year. And we tried to keep it positive and focus on the accomplishments of the college during that period. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them either today or feel free to email or call me.
How about John Parham's photographer?
It is so
I want to be 40 again. That's how old this picture is. Yeah.
Some of the pictures, we can update the pictures at any time.
Are you
You can
kidding?
call the office. If you'd like to.
strategic plan, Dr. White.
In your package, you should have an updated copy of the current strategic plan, the 2013-14 update, as well as a copy of our future next year 14-15 strategic plan. Again, if you have any question about either of those documents, I'd be glad to answer.
The SACS focused report that I spoke about earlier, you have a copy of it. I can't imagine why you would want to read it, but you do have a copy. And the SGA report, I missed a while back.
Okay. Well, we have next, not this Wednesday, but the next Wednesday is our last meeting. We're wrapping up for the year. We have, and then I steal gavel because I've become so attached to it and people listen. But we have everyone, all of our clubs now are just gearing up for finals and getting ready for graduation and pinning ceremonies. We had a number of our clubs work for the job and the career fair, which was a great wrap-up experience. And we have our activity day, the Earth Day, coming up. Let's see, the wrap-up for the clubs. One thing that I do want to say is we had we'd started having societies. In addition to the clubs that they're organized a little more informally. You know, they don't have as many obligations. They don't receive the money. They don't receive the funds. But it's a good chance for them to step up to clubs later. And we have a number of new clubs. One that I'm very excited about is the Women in Technology Club. And they were sworn in less than a month ago, and they have hit the ground running. And that's women in non-traditional fields, and they are strong, and they're doing a great job. One of the funny things is we have 2 societies that started at the same time, and one is an anti-war social justice, kind of a socialist society, and the other one's a libertarian society. And the socialists have a bank account, they're organized, and I went back to the libertarians and I said, you guys have got to get organized, because he said, it's the story of my people. But this is, you know, I was able to work as secretary last year with our student government, and I cannot tell you how strong this year's group has been. You know, if you ever have a chance to thank any of them, they have been so active and enthusiastic, and just, it's been a great year with them. It's been a great experience.
You know, I've got to echo that. I went to the SGA meeting about 3-4 weeks ago, and it was in this room, and this room was filled. There must have been 35 to 50 people here. I was astounded at the involvement this year.
And master facilities plan, they were on that. They wanted information. So, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And if I may say one other quick thing before we let you go. These other events that are on here, you've been invited to that volunteer luncheon, folks. I know we take too much of your time, and I apologize for that. So by all means, if you'd like to come to the luncheon, we would love to have you here, but don't at all feel guilty if in some of these invitations we send you, you've just got another life other than here at AV Tech. We keep you too busy, and we would just want you to know you're welcome, but by all means, you don't have to be there.
Okay. With that, any further business? I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Say aye. Anybody?
Yeah,